Across the Spider-Verse is an absolutely incredible comic book movie, but it also introduces really wild ideas and concepts when it comes to the Marvel Multiverse. And I think this is exciting and vital information for what Marvel and Sony are both going to be doing as we head towards Avengers Secret Wars. Because yes, I think the consequences of this movie are going to impact the MCU. Yes, I think Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal have been planning stuff together. And on top of all of that, insiders have now come forward to confirm that the two studios did in fact work together on this multiverse. Wow, wee wow. I'm gonna get sweaty as hell and explain to you how all of this is working together. Buckle up, we've got a lot to talk about. Smash the freaking like button and let's begin. So I think we should preface this entire video, this whole conversation, with one main question. Do these connections between Across the Spider-Verse and how that multiverse is treated and the MCU multiverse actually matter? Like, is Kevin Feige going to pay this movie any mind, or is he just going to ignore it completely and keep doing his own thing when it comes to the multiverse? And I can honestly see why someone would believe that. It might just amount to fan service, or the team over with Across the Spider-Verse just wanting to do something cool. Because there's stuff that Marvel has done before that I've just amounted to an Easter egg that doesn't actually impact the canon, like the whole Wolverine tease from She-Hulk. I don't really think that matters. I don't think that for sure means that we've got Wolverine in the MCU. Probably just somebody in the visual effects department having a bit of fun. But when it comes to Across the Spider-Verse, I think it's different. Not only do they specifically reference No Way Home, but they even show the multiverse branching out just like it does in the MCU. And furthermore, when it comes to Marvel and Sony, they've got a lot of reasons to want to continue to work together. And this is mainly because of Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies and the collaboration between Sony and Marvel making them a bunch of money. I mean, even before Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man Far From Home was actually the highest grossing movie that Sony had ever had as a studio. And No Way Home was, of course, the global box office juggernaut that we all know it to be. It was freaking amazing, and it made all the money. And that movie also involved the multiverse. It was the concept where they could bring in Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and have them interact with Tom Holland Spider-Man. And so it's obvious that Marvel wants to do more of that, Sony wants to do more of that, and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are seemingly open to doing more of it as well, except that they need it to really matter. They're not just going to come back for money. They need it to be impactful to the character. Listen to these answers that they gave about accepting the job, and it having a lot to do with the pitch and the enthusiasm that Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige had.
I gotta say, I was intrigued immediately. Like in that conversation, the intention, the kind of love and celebration of these movies and what it meant, I think, to Amy and Kevin was apparent. And to me, when artists or people who are steering the creative process have a kind of authentic, genuine intent of celebration and love, it just was so apparent in both of them that I don't know, I just wanted to join that.
Again, in a similar way to what Toby was saying, it was like, oh, the intention feels very pure here. It actually feels like a great creative idea and a great creative story. It wasn't like they were just asking us to come and say hi and then leave again, but actually have our presence being in service to Tom, being in service to Tom's journey and where he is as Peter Parker, and how I love the destiny feeling of the multiverse expanding in this film, and actually that without Toby's Peter and Andrew's Peter being present for Tom's Peter at this very moment, he may not become the Peter Parker that he's supposed to become.
So the companies want more of Tom, Toby, and Andrew together. Tom, Toby, and Andrew are down to do it, but only if it's meaningful. And that's why I really think the multiverse stuff that's put into Across the Spider-Verse is put there intentionally to strengthen the connection between some live action Spider-Man like Toby and Andrew, who we literally see at the Spider-Verse, group thing, and Tom Holland, the Sacred Timeline, and the 616 MCU. And we've even seen some insiders talking about this. Alex Perez literally just did a whole podcast where he broke down all kinds of stuff he heard about Across the Spider-Verse, and he confirmed that Marvel Studios was a big part of the collaboration here to figure out how to wind the multiversal stuff from the sacred timeline and what Marvel is doing into Across the Spider-Verse. And on top of that, Phil Lord and Chris Miller recently came out and talked about the collaboration they had with Marvel. They said here, Marvel has given us a lot of rope. It's been a very fruitful collaboration. So what was put into Across the Spider-Verse was intentional, and it was put there in a very careful way to tie these different Spider-Men together with the live action MCU so that we can have another scenario in which you get more live action Spider-Man together fighting against crazy multiversal enemies, and yet Sony also gets to explore multiverse connections further in their own stuff. But now that we have that question out of the way, I think now we need to focus on the absolutely mind-blowing reveals about the multiverse and Across the Spider-Verse and talk about how they line up with things that are already established in the MCU. And I think the first thing to consider here is that very early on in the movie, when Miguel comes into Gwen Stacy's universe to stop the Vulture, he explains that he is a part of an elite Spider-Man strike force that is tasked with defending the multiverse. He goes on to talk about how her and her friends blew this hole into the multiverse. This was the Kingpin's collider from the first Across the Spider-Verse movie. And while Gwen exclaims that they fixed that problem, Miguel counters by saying that she blew a hole so wide in the multiverse that villains like this Vulture dude are slipping into dimensions that they don't belong in. And Miguel has been tasked with taking all of these anomalies and putting them back into their proper universes to stop the collapse of the entire multiverse. And while he's explaining it, he also says, and don't get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd from Earth 19999999. And that's a direct connection to events that happened in Spider-Man No Way Home, where the multiverse was cracked open and you had all these villains coming into the universe of Tom Holland from different universes, and the Spider-Man as well. They're all just in that universe. And at the end of that movie, there's a spell that's beginning to take all the villains from throughout the multiverse into Tom Holland's MCU. And so we can assume that the events of Spider-Man No Way Home caused some issues in the multiverse that Miguel is cleaning up. It's not just what happened in Across the Spider-Verse, but also the events of that MCU movie. And later on, we see Donald Glover in live action as the Prowler there at the Spider Citadel with Miguel, and he's been captured and likely going to be sent back to his home universe. Now, this is obviously very similar to the TVA from Loki season 1. It's a group that is going around the multiverse mostly unnoticed, and they are doing things to right the wrongs of variants. Now, there's obviously one big difference between the TVA of Loki season 1 and the Spider people that Miguel runs, and that is that we actually can see that Miguel and the Spider Society are dealing with the actual multiverse, and rather than pruning timelines, they are actually going into timelines to try and save them from being destroyed. The TVA from Loki season 1 are actually going into branch timelines and deleting them to keep the sacred timeline a singular horizon. But the two groups are really similar. They seem to be operating in something like the shadows, and they're going around the multiverse mostly unseen. The concept of variance is very similar to the concepts of anomalies. Even the Spider Society headquarters visually looks a lot like the TVA headquarters. And of course, both groups used these weird wrist devices to open portals into different timelines. There's also, strangely, a robotic AI type entity in both organizations. You have Miss Minutes in the TVA, and you have Lila, who is the AI that's running models and helping Miguel in the Spider Society. Now, the concept of canon events is a really interesting addition addition to this idea of the multiverse. It seems to be that all spider people from different versions of different universes have similar events that happen to them, and these events form who they are. Now, this is really similar to the concept of fixed moments in time from the What If show, specifically the What If show that focuses on Doctor Strange. This version of Doctor Strange is trying to keep Christine Palmer alive, and he can't. It's a fixed moment in time, or a canon event to him in his universe. And it seems in both examples, if you do something to disrupt the fixed moment in time or the canon event, something pushes back. The universe itself begins to unravel. So there seems to be a force outside of all the known universes that is controlling the way certain things happen in each and every timeline. I personally think that that's eternity. Consider that when Miguel is showing the model of the multiverse to Miles, this little blue dot comes down and Miguel says that this is everything. It then hits the floor, forms into some kind of web, and we see a branch of the multiverse spring up. And then around that branch of the multiverse is the web of life and destiny, which connects all the different lives of all the Spider-Man together. Miles explains that canon events are events that bind their lives together, and if they are broken, it could destroy the world, and that is why anomalies are so dangerous. He calls the canon event ASM 90 a moment where a police captain that's close to Spider-Man dies. And so the basic idea here is that there seems to be this web of life and destiny that is connecting all of these heroes that are known as the Spider-Man, or Spider Totems if you follow the Madam Web logic, and those characters seem to be a very important part of the universe itself. It is essential that they exist in some way, shape, or form, and these canon events appear to be just fixed things that have to happen to those people in order for them to become the heroes that we need. And so where this leaves us with the Marvel multiverse is that there are multiple teams that are going around the multiverse to try and fix it. You've got the Guardians of the Multiverse from the What If show, led by Uatu, and trust me, they will convene again in What If Season 2 and possibly in other things leading up to Secret Wars. You've got the TVA, which seems to be operating in most universes, and in Loki Season 1, they are just focused on the sacred timeline, but I think in Loki Season 2, they're going to be focused on the entirety of the multiverse. You've got the Council of Kangs that appear in the post-credit scene of Quantum Mania, and they appear to have complete control over a large portion of the multiverse. And then there's the Spider Society, which is traveling around the multiverse, stopping different villains from being there because they're not supposed to, and making sure that canon events are taking place. And I think they're all existing to fix a multiverse that is just constantly breaking down, perhaps just naturally leading to entropy, or perhaps there's something else going on. And I think this allows Marvel and Sony to cross over any characters that they would desire, while also allowing Sony to do its own thing, which is impacted by MCU events, but doesn't have to be constrained by them. But the connections between Spider People, the web of life and destiny, and the multiverse, I think will be a very important thread as to why Tom Holland and perhaps Tobey Maguire and even Andrew Garfield are going to be important to fighting Kang the Conqueror. We've talked about this before, but there are a lot of rumors that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to be the lead of the Kang dynasty. And again, that probably makes sense because of his connection to the web of life and destiny and his ability using his spider sense, which again is probably just a connection to that cosmic web of life and destiny. He'll actually be a threat to Kang. Peter Parker would be someone that could come up against Kang or the Council of Kangs and give them some serious trouble. And based on a lot of rumors that we've heard about the Madam Web movie and even Venom 3, it seems like Sony is setting up a live action saga or story that will also be taking a lot of the logic that's set up in Across the Spider-Verse and coming up with a grand Spider-Geddon-esque story for a lot of their live action people. So yes, I do think that this all matters, and I think it all makes sense as for how it's all working together. But there are a few problems. I'm not gonna lie. There are some things that even still confuse me. Number one is the glitching. I don't fully understand it. Why are the characters in Spider-Verse glitching out when they go into the wrong universe, but the characters in the MCU don't have that problem? I've seen a really interesting fan theory here suggesting that multiversal travel through magic is more stable than artificial time travel through tech, and that could explain why nobody in the MCU has glitched yet, and that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, technically speaking, in the MCU, at least in the live action MCU, we've only ever seen characters jump into another universe using the dream walking ability that's in the Darkhold, or going through a portal that was created either through magic or through America Chavez's powers. The characters that are brought into Spider-Man No Way Home do so through magic. You could even argue that the characters that jump into other universes in the What If show are also using magic. And I even reached out to Alex Perez about this, and he said that the magic versus science is the key to this difference. I'm also confused as to how animated stuff works with live action stuff, but I think there's actually a clue in the movie that might fit this together. When Gwen goes to the universe where Peter B. Parker is, the watch that she's using says 616B. And this is crazy because it ties into his name being Peter B. Parker. It is also possible that, according to Miguel and the Spider Society, there is a 616, but then there's a 616B, and maybe the 616B is the animated version of that universe. But that all takes me to another confusing bit. I'm not really sure why there's a 616 according to Miguel in the Spider-Verse, but our Earth, the one that the MCU has, is Earth 1999999. But I also have a theory that could make sense of this, because I think these different organizations are probably just cataloging the universe separately. And I think that Reed Richards from the 838 universe probably cataloged 616 pretty early on in their multiversal journey. And I think that's because 838 and 616 are both branching off of the new multiverse that is created from the Sacred Timeline after Loki season 1. And I think Miguel and his universe, and a lot of the universes that we see in Across the Spider-Verse, are happening in the already existing multiverse, which was being oversaw by the Council of Kangs. If you didn't know, my current theory on this is that the Sacred Timeline was not the only timeline that was in existence, but rather a separated and isolated timeline that He Who Remain had outside of normal multiversal space. Either way, it's crazy to try to fit all of this together. I do think there's a lot of parallels here and a lot of stuff to dive into if you're a big sweaty nerd like me. I've done my best job to try to explain all of this and talk about why I think it matters and how it's going to impact the projects in the future. But of course, time will tell as far as how much planning there's been going on between Sony and Marvel and how this will impact the live action MCU movies as we head towards Secret Wars. If you like this video, smash a freaking like on it. And if you have any questions about the theory, you can always come on by one of our live streams, which I usually do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you can ask me about the theory in real time.